I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Hey, what's up, world? Good morning. Welcome to this impromptu special edition of I Mix What I Like live right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, happy to be your host. And before we get started, please do sign up. blackpowermedia.org. Make sure you are following us at the Twitter spot and joining the channel if you can. Yeah. And all of that good stuff. And please make sure that you if you've missed anything, you go back to the channel and check all the stuff. That's a lot of content coming from me and my comrades. We did a lot of stuff yesterday, for instance, with Black Alliance for Peace, their Haitian Solidarity Rally. We covered that with them. We talked with Professor Dylan Rodriguez about his new book, White Reconstruction, after that. And then I see today, or it was just put up, let me see, Luke Mon Nation has a great conversation coming up. I don't think it's today. I think is this their Friday show? Let me just double check that real quick. Let's see. Anyway, it's coming up. So just make sure you're all signed up at blackpowermedia.org, and then you don't have to worry about missing anything. And if you hit the bell and all of that, then you get the notifications when we go live and all that kind of stuff. So I want to ooh, I sure did misspell, didn't I? Yeah, I need to edit that. Let me make that correction real quick. Yeah, there's a couple things I just wanted to quickly jump on and talk about before going to my class this morning. And in fact, it in many ways this may help me in terms of preparing for the class later this morning. Yeah, and plus, yeah, we are up early because we need to get and I and others need to get, this is late for me. I've been up for hours, but we need to get used to being not only up but here, because in just a couple of weeks, the Remix Morning Show is going to launch right here at Black Power Media. And so we all need to start adjusting ourselves to these morning broadcasts. Even as, you know what, I just did it again. I kept saying, I said I wasn't going to do this, and I did it again. I didn't. I said I wasn't going to jump on it during Voices with Vision with Net for Freeman on WPFW, which is airing right now as well. So anyway, I won't be mad if you all, anybody leaves to go check out that show and comes back and check the replay later. That's all good, because I did say I wouldn't want to ever want to cause any of that struggle for anybody, because Voices with Vision is incredible radio, and I should be probably listening myself, but I got a little anxious, and so I messed up. So may all the forces in the universe forgive me, but including Netfa and Voices with Vision, to the extent that we're, it's not like it's not like we've siphoned off their entire audience here with the handful of thoughtful viewers we have right now. But nonetheless, so let me try to. So I did reach out to Mrs. Rice, because I think that what she has said may be ruffling some feathers, perhaps, or discomforting to some, but I think is an important criticism, and of course she has every right to raise it. And what it is that she's saying here is, does that help on your end as well? And what she's calling out is the what happened with the Grammys the other night. So it was interesting because as I titled, the piece here, this this stream, who gives an F about a goddamn Grammy? Who gives a fuck about a goddamn Grammy? That was the Public Enemy response that I grew up with initially back in the day, when hip hop was initially complaining, or some were complaining, that hip hop wasn't being recognized by the Grammys. And then I think it was the very following year that the Fresh Prince got the first rap Grammy, and things, it continued advancingly in a reactionary way, progressing, all those contradictions intended, puns intended, or contradictions intended. What was said to be an advance with more Black inclusion, I would argue, and have been arguing, and others have been long arguing, is not actually an advance. It causes more confusion and distraction, and encourages people to want to be acknowledged and rewarded by an apparatus that is harmful. And I think that we need to be more critical of. So I'm not doing, but again, as I've always said, I'm not doing this to be critical of the individuals involved. So yes, Samaria Rice, Mrs. Rice, Tamir Rice's mother calls out Tamika Mallory and has some harsh words for her. I'm not going to begrudge her anger, as having suffered as she has. But my own particular approach is to not personalize it, but to understand the function that these apparatuses are meant to play, and that they encourage us as individuals to play. And then the point being, ultimately, and I'll come back to this, that the more we are organized, the more we are politically organized and working in unison, the less likely we are to engage in individual mistakes, failures, co-optation, corruption, or disunity. I've pointed out in the past, I've been guilty of this myself, in terms of taking on, for instance, certain debates, not this most recent one, but personally, privately, and just as an individual, when there was no political value to it, and it was more maybe ego or anger or frustration, or just a tendency to want to engage, and at times even become I think righteously or necessarily combative or hostile to certain efforts or individuals or politics. But if you're not organized, if you're not able to be prepared or even coached or encouraged not to do certain things, then when we act as individuals, we tend to this. Perhaps this is at least what I'm seeing happen here. So when Tamika Mallory performs as part of Lil Baby's Grammy performance, and if you see it, it's Killer Mike is in it. It's as good an artistic, pop cultural artistic critique of what's going on as anything. I actually thought the rhymes were nice. I thought the production was nice. I get what they're trying to do. But I also get how it is performing or participating, I think, and I think this is part of Miss Rice's argument, in corrupting or co-opting what is actually going on here. So when the Grammys allow for Black performance and inclusion and space to even raise certain criticisms of what's happening in the world, police violence, etc., how is the critique being allowed to appear? What ranges of political analysis are allowed to be brought to bear on the subject? And beyond performance, what does it lead to? So Tamika Mallory, offered a poem in the middle of that rhyme, talking about it's been a hell of a year, hell for over 400 years. But then, as Miss Rice points out, she says, "I'm tired of you Black Lives Matters, Tamika Mallory and crew, bees, that riding these families back in y'all ambulance chasing attorneys, Ben Crump, Lee Merrick, too, have all F up our fight, and y'all can kiss my ass too." I really do struggle with cussing in public. not privately, but in public. I think it really is. Speaking of WPFW, I think it really is all that, all those years in public broadcasting. But I also think it is that Kwame Ture thing. And you could check one of the previous episodes of The Last Dope Intellectual where Dr. CBS and I have this discussion a little bit. But anyway, so I don't begrudge people using the language. I just see that I struggle with it, even when I'm not intending to. So, but the point here that I think that she's raising, and then she goes on, by the way, Miss Rice says, Tamika and the crew, UB's chasing, clout chasing, along with Sonny, I'm not even sure who that is, Crump and Lee. Y'all have literally F up our fight. I hope not another family soul used y'all to represent them. Y'all might as well be junior pigs, cops. I'm mad as hell. Or I'm mad as yell. Let me not misquote her. Maybe she intended that. That might be kind of slick. And my point, and anyway, the reason that I wanted to have at least something to say and try to connect it to something else that I was looking at as well, is that, again, the point about being politically organized, broadening the range of debate and the range of analysis that we bring to bear, and then reducing the likelihood of these kinds of conflicts. So on the one hand, beyond what has been offered traditionally is defense for these performances, I'm not entirely sure what Tamika Mallory and Lil Baby were intending to have happen here, other than using time at the Grammys to on the positive end, to just inject politics into spaces where they're not welcomed, and a legit critique that is still in need of being addressed. But on the other hand, if it is about clout chasing and it is about neoliberal nonprofit politics, as we discussed with Professor Rodriguez yesterday, and especially, and I put the link up in the context of Robert Allen's critique of that going back, 40, 50 years already, and the link by which I mean the link to our classic 2009 interview with Robert Allen about his work. If that is the even unintended effect, then it does need to be called out and checked. What is the relationship between the people who are popularly speaking on these issues and the people who are suffering? We've seen a lot of that in reference with Shaun King over the years being called out for this, and I was called out recently. By the way, yeah, that's a fair point to bring up. I was called out recently. Now, I should say I wasn't called out properly. I wasn't called out directly. I wasn't called out as a comrade. I wasn't called out as a longtime friend or activist. I was indirectly called out and chastised for doing the interview, I think it was a week or so ago, with Tori Russell, who, beyond my own knowledge and memory, at least, has been accused of some misdealings within the movement. Honestly, I don't know the details, but this is in part what the criticism was. And the argument was that by giving him space, I was, I guess, because this was not said to me directly, I was, I guess, unintentionally hurting the efforts that I'm claiming to want to support. So even in having him on to be critical of what was happening with Black Lives Matter and its leadership, and by the way, Patrisse Cullors has not yet, she has responded, but not to accept the invitation to come on. That by doing that, I was giving room to some bad actors, including some criticism of Mike Brown Sr. and then all of this that again, I'm not, so in other words, the self-critique, if were this brought to me differently, I would say that the criticism could have been said, well, Jared, your distance, you claim to want to be doing emancipatory journalism, which is about being involved in activist organization and producing media and journalism to represent that struggle. If you claim to be in this broader struggle and supportive of it, then you have to be closer to it to know when you are supporting through interview, quote unquote, bad actors. I think that would be a legit starting point for a discussion, at least with me or with Black Power Media or with any of us. It may or may not be legit. It may or may not be appropriate, but I think that would be a good starting point. And this is sort of the point I'm getting at here. So the question shouldn't become, or I don't think, I'm not advocating, certainly in my own criticism, I'm not advocating that this become, now obviously for Ms. Rice, this is more personal, but analytically, I would not argue that we should be this personal, whether it's a critique of me or Tamika Mallory or anyone else. I would think that analytically, the critique should be, again, at least as a starting point, what is the relationship of these quote unquote spokespeople or media people or journalists or academics to the grassroots activism? Again, that's what Dylan Rodriguez was talking in some about with us yesterday. When academics come in, Dr. CBS has brought this up in her work. When academics come in and claim to be abolitionists, for instance, Lawrence Grand Prix, in our interview with him and Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, talked about this in terms of the issue of defund the police. When certain people come in with either academic or neoliberal nonprofit politics and attach themselves as spokespeople or popular representatives, et cetera, so on, of an issue, but without proper organization and connection to those grassroots struggles and politics and radical versions of that, I should say, in particular, these kinds of, I think we're all open to this kind of criticism and critique. So whether it's I or us here at BPM or anyone else who does this kind of YouTubery or journalism, or people like Tamika Mallory, I think that there should be a deeper engagement with the politics and the movements that we're claiming to represent and deal with, to reduce the likelihood of this kind of corruption. And then, as I put in the post when I shared this elsewhere, my point was that I think on some level, Ms. Rice is offering the Vernon philosophy of pop culture and Black political organization, which is just essentially saying, as I would reframe it, and I did reach out to her, by the way, Ms. Rice, and hopefully she'll come on and she'll offer her own correction of this. But my interpretation of that would be, well, we can't keep looking for pop cultural, commercial media projections, representations, or symbolism that purports to be representing our struggle, our movements, our efforts, and we should look at them very critically. So that I don't watch the Grammys anyway, but when I did watch the video of that performance, I'm looking at it already from the perspective of why would I'm not sure if Grammys are still on ABC, but why would a Disney product be wanting to allow a projection of a critique of police violence? What's not in the message? Or what is couching the message? If I watch maybe the rest of the Grammys, if you watch several hours of conspicuous consumption and neoliberal politics and yay Democratic Party, then what good or what value is it that Tamika Mallory includes in her criticism in her poem that Biden must now be held accountable? Why would he be held accountable? None of this was on a platform that got him elected. The man doesn't even do press conferences. We don't, many are speculating he's not even going to finish his presidency. And a woman that couldn't even get a single, I think, delegate coming out of her own state in California, or certainly couldn't get nominated out of her own state of California, is possibly going to be the president, the top cop, prosecutor in chief, lock him up, expand the military and the police funding, vice president is going to send to the presidency. And I don't think her gender or her relative complexion is going to save anybody. So from going back several months and years now, the criticism I would share of all of that would be, well, why are we again going back to this again, putative, radical claim of holding someone accountable when they're already elected? And they're already governing, and they're already being manipulated by probably other forces. I don't think Biden has anything to do with anything that's going on right now, frankly. But even if he does, he's operating just as everyone else has. Give nothing to the people, rebrand it as some overwhelming support for the poor, bomb, Syria, and expand deny the raise of a minimum wage to $15, which is itself insufficient, and which itself wasn't even going to kick in for another 4 or 5 years anyway, or whatever. What good does it do now to offer up some fist up, stern words in the middle of a rhyme and in a poetic verse saying we're going to hold him accountable? That to me, again, but that to me is the same kind of projection of these weak politics and analyses that I would encourage that we may be moving away from. And that's why I wouldn't expect and would want us not to look for reflections of that struggle as these two tweets stand in contradiction to one another. Tamika Mallory brings fire to Lil Baby's Grammy performance. And then Miss Rice is saying, no, she's a bee and a clout chasing hustler. And then I'm saying separately, all of it is expanding neoliberal soft politics that we need to be breaking away from. So anyway, that was at least one thing I wanted to quickly raise this morning as I was responding and looking at some of this, and this, and I'm going to look at the comments in the chat in a minute. I haven't even gotten there yet. But anyway, so yes, once we get past some of the name calling and all of that, I think the question comes back to what is our relationship to political organization, and then what is our relationship to the imposed product that is the Grammys, or even this idea again, the Vernon philosophy I think holds with that as well. Why are we looking for ourselves in a Grammy award? Now I get it as an individual, we all want recognition and we all want praise. But I'm talking about collectively as a political analysis. I think we need to be moving away from that, so that if someone does say to an individual, hey, we really like you and we want to praise you, we want to hold you up on a pedestal, it would be easier if working as part of an organized collective for the collective to say, no, you can't just snatch one of us and then put us on a pedestal and praise us and then use us in our performance to suggest that there is some overall change occurring, that there is some overall potential for hope in what exists in opening itself up to a new world, simply as a response to a performance, not a movement, not a militant assumption of political power, but a performance. And I think that anyway. So that was one piece of this. I want to quickly try to switch this to segue before I respond to any comments, questions, critiques, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, condemnation, consternation, confusion, etc. Because part of what I keep thinking when I think about this is the Fanon quote that I keep butchering and should always have in front of me anyway, that the goal of the colonizer is to crush the dreams of the colonized, and the goal and the objective of the colonized is to dream of every means possible of destroying the colony or the colonizer. In other words, that our fantasy, as Robin Kelly once wrote, our freedom dreams have been suppressed, have been limited. And I've made this point before, that when I ask my students multiple times, almost every semester, or almost every class every semester, what do you want out of your life in this world? What change would you like to see? So many, it's almost entirely, the responses at this point are individual. I want a better job. I want a better house. I want to have a career. I want to do this. I want to do that. And without invitation, almost no one, and this is anecdotal and obviously not scientific, but I think that it is representative given how often it happens, that it almost never fails that without encouragement, the response is not something collective. I want a better world. I want, world peace. Even I want in my community, I want freedom for my people. I want my people to be free, to be, so much of that seems suppressed. And I think that has a lot to do with the way our politics and our histories are projected to us through popular culture, popular media, popular discussion, and the ranges of our analyses are intentionally limited so that it suppresses over time, slowly, our freedom dreams. So one of them is that this, I think that where this is connected to is in some of the response that even I and others have been calling for in terms of maybe reform on the way to revolution, so to speak, or a way, as I would maybe prefer to put it, of expanding those ranges of analyses to expand our dreams of freedom a little bit. But in terms of what we're asking for, there's something that I would encourage people to go check the interview I did recently with Dr. Mark Blythe, the economist from Brown University, where I had suggested that he in his book Angrynomics had come up with a practical, not a revolutionary, a practical solution to my argument at the end of The Myth of Black Buying Power, that we go for a redistribution of GDP as opposed to chasing after some mythical use of a little more than $1 trillion in buying power, which is not real. But I think there's a better, more practical option that's becoming more popularly discussed now that I missed, that I think is a better one. And I've seen economist Michael Hudson. A number of you have asked that I interview him, and I would happily do that if I can reach him. I've not been able to, so if anyone wants to help with that, I'm happy to have that happen. But I've been, quote unquote, fan of his work for a number of years. But he and others like Steve Grumbine and other, the modern monetary theory folks have been talking a lot about what they're calling what is called a debt jubilee. And the point that at least as I'm interpreting their point, that instead of asking for things like even like an improvement in the minimum wage or a universal basic income or or maybe I should say in addition to advocating for these things, but I happen to think that this debt jubilee point is better. In other words, instead of asking for even things like what I was saying, the redistribution of GDP, what they're saying is giving you more money, and I think this is right, giving you more money is irrelevant. And this is exactly why I did quote George Jackson, who was, I think, one of the few luminaries to get this issue of buying power correct in his own lifetime. Because George Jackson said, fine, they can increase our purchasing power, but then they mitigate that by rising, by inflation and inflating the prices of the products that we're buying. So it all balances out in the end anyway. And that's what these MMT, modern monetary theorists, are saying, that they can give you more money, but that's fine because it doesn't change the relationship. All that does is increase GDP, which, going back to my initial point, is the wealth created for those who own the economy. Well, they own the economy. So if they give you more money, all you're going to do is spend it back in the economy that they own, and that's going to raise GDP and raise money for them, increase their wealth. So it may feel good, of course, obviously, to get a $1,400 check, or to be getting that every week, never mind every month, never mind just once or twice in a year. It will feel better than obviously getting nothing. But it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't change anything. It certainly doesn't upset power and our relationship to the economy. It just makes the rich richer and allows us to sustain that economy by participating more in it. So instead of just giving themselves money as they did over the summer, the financial elite last year, giving us money as consumers, allowing us to spend it in the economy, almost does the exact same thing. And also what they did last summer was they replaced what we weren't able to do through consumption by just creating money for themselves and giving it to themselves. And meanwhile, our relationship to the economy doesn't change, even when they do end up giving us some, quote unquote, a few people, some checks. So the bridge I'm trying to draw here is that to the extent that disorganized neoliberal nonprofit pop cultural event planning, disorganized organization is dominant, it in many ways limits the ranges of thoughts and ideas and radical militant histories we bring to bear on the problems, and limits the kinds of solutions we advocate for. So when I go into Black media spaces and I see the same, I think, limited and narrow range of discussion, certainly around economics, and then I go to certain white left spaces that don't talk to Black people, even as they bring on non-Black representatives of Black outlets as the only representatives of those Black outlets that they talk to, which is just a wild and so obvious contradiction in the so-called white left's media spaces. But at least they're having in some of these spaces economic conversations that are better and more appropriate than I see us having in quote unquote ours. So I would like to, that's why I would like to bring some of that over here, even if it needs to be criticized farther for, obviously I'm not going to catch everything that might be wrong with it, but it just sounds so much better than where we are. So in other words, a debt jubilee is better than giving away money because it just cancels debt. And if you don't owe, if your mortgage is paid, if your student loan is paid, if your credit card debt is just wiped out, if all of those debts are wiped out, it is true you're not maybe in the same way being given a check or a bunch of money, which should probably happen also. But the debt peonage, the wage, the debt enslavement, so to speak, is wiped out. And immediately, even without an improved income, everyone's position just gets better. If your car note is wiped out, if everything debt-wise is wiped out, I know selfishly, I mean, personally, we're not nearly in those kinds of destitute positions. I mean, yet, I mean, we're one whatever, knock on wood away, but if all of our debt was wiped out, immediately the income we earn now becomes something else, becomes more usable. So that would be something I wish I had put at the solution at the back of the Myth of Black Buying Power book. Now, I admit that my solution section there was really, honestly, I only put it in there so that people who are often critical of me for raising a critique of buying power, wouldn't have that added silly excuse of, well, you don't have a solution, so therefore how can I listen to your criticism? But I think I was limited in my own, I didn't want to go to where I think we need to go in terms of a revolutionary analysis. I was trying to think of something practical that would more or less be easily adapted or accepted by an audience who had already suffered through a critique of something that they've held dear for so long. But this is a better version, I think. Cancel the debt, a debt jubilee, as it's called. Now, there was one, by the way, I had pulled up one thing from Michael Hudson's page, by the way, just to, because there's a paragraph where he summarizes what MMT is, modern monetary theory, and actually explains quickly in this one succinct paragraph how it's used. And it's actually in this, The Use and Abuse of MMT on his website. And of course, now I just lost where I was on the thing with the thing. The whole thing is dope. The whole thing is very interesting and useful. It was right under, summary. Modern monetary theory, or MMT, was developed to explain the logic of running government budget deficits to increase demand in the economy's consumption and capital investment sectors so as to maintain full employment. But the enormous U.S. federal budget deficits from the Obama bank bailout after 2008 crash through Trump tax cuts and coronavirus financial bailout have not pumped money into the economy to finance new direct investment, employment rate, rising wages, and living standards. Instead, government money creation and quantitative easing, or inflation, have been directed to the finance, insurance, and real estate or FIRE sectors. The result is a travesty of MMT, not the original aim. And his point is simply that if you again, to the extent that I think I understand it, is simply that while MMT would work if again, as Mark Blythe explained to us, in an economy like this one, where you have a strong economy and you print your own money, like in the United States, there should, running a deficit should never be an issue, because you can always print more money to pay off any debt. And then you can just always give money, as MMT is arguing, you can always make money available to people to consume so that the economy goes on as normal. But instead of giving money to consumers, as I was just saying last summer, for instance, during the coronavirus bailout, instead of giving money to us through, again, direct payouts, through full employment, through jobs, through tax cuts, through whatever else they could have done, instead of doing that, they just gave all that money to the most elite, so that the consumption we could not do to drive the economy would be covered, and the elite would still have and make all of their money, and we would continue to suffer. Then they could do all of the things that happened subsequent to that. For instance, politically, they could run campaigns saying, if you vote for the Democratic Party, you will get your $2,000 check, you will get your $15 minimum wage, and you'll get rid of the Trump whoever. Then, with not any Republican support, the Democratic Party trying to appease a Republican Party that they was not going to support it anyway, got none of those things in a bill that they could have had anything that they wanted in, because they had enough votes to pass it, but they didn't. So, but by not giving us anything, you can run all of those hustles. By suppressing more both the dreams and the material conditions of people in this society, you can get away with the false political claims, the false economic analyses, the nominal black radical punditry that tells everybody to vote Democrat, to save ourselves, etc. You can run all of that, and then you can come back with a Grammy performance that appears to be progressive or radical or challenging or promoting radical blackness, etc., and so forth, but leaves people like Miss Rice is saying out in the cold, unaddressed, the situation unchanged, and no analysis or organizational movement headed in an advancing direction. And so anyway, so that's how the bridge I was trying to draw quickly, and I'll be trying to draw in my classes today, as I'm sure we're going to be talking about this throughout. Anyway, I just wanted to, try that out with our BPM audience and see what you all think. So I'm going to go check the comments now and see what. Anyway, and as I said, again, want us to get ready to be broadcasted, get everybody, all of us, our audience is ready for the morning show that's about to come in a couple of weeks. That's what I was talking about earlier. The Luke Mons are coming up later on. I think but is that today? No, it is tonight. That's right. Thank you, David. That is tonight. So anyway, like, share, subscribe, please join the channel. And peace, everybody. Peace, Ricky. Peace. No question. And she went in. She went in. And again, now I'm saying, she has every right to do what she wants to do. I'm suggesting that those of us who have the room to step back a little bit, and I do think that our analysis should be less personal, and more of the structures that encourage the behavior of the little babies and the Tamika Mallorys, and as I said earlier, of the me's of me, to the extent that criticism was correct, and I'm not sure that it was, but to the extent that it was, my point would be I'm responding to a structural situation and my own insufficient relationship organizationally. Anyway. The question that must be asked is, how is Tamika Mallory's activism any different than Al Sharpton? I mean, again, that's a legit question. And to the extent that we are better organized, it makes room for the Sharptons less possible. Again, we have to remember, and I'm riffing off of David Gilbert on this one, the white political prisoner still locked up for his defense of the BLA and Black liberation. But in a letter writing exchange with him some years ago, he pointed out, first of all, I called him my generation's John Brown. He didn't like that. He didn't agree with that. If out of respect to John Brown, he thought what he did was insufficient. That was actually kind of an interesting. But he also said the reason that the Al Sharptons have all this room is because his argument, I agree, was that COINTELPRO had wiped out the scientific analysis of the Black liberation struggle, which leaves room for a lot of messianic stuff and a lot of the chicanery of the Al Sharptons. And that would be sort of the point I'm getting at. And I do have a different opinion of Al Sharpton than Tamika Mallory at this point, but to the extent that Tamika might be encouraged to be headed in that direction, that's a problem of our lack of organization. And I would prefer that it not be put on the failure of her as an individual. Anyway, her boots are on the ground, every ground, because she has the resources to move when people get killed. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Asada, that's right. Liberal, most useless word in the dictionary. Anyway, so one last point of emphasis here. Where's the white support for David Gilbert? That's another good point. Look, hey, straight up, I have reached out over the years to just about every white left journalist I could think of on this and many other questions. I remember years ago reaching out saying, well, all the talk of now Chelsea Manning, you all didn't even talk about Tom Manning. Like there was another even white Manning political prisoner that they just let die in prison. I reached out this past week about over Mumia. I reached out to everybody that I could think of on the so-called white left, progressive left. I even went on some of their YouTube shows and put in a super chat. So to his credit, Richard Medhurst, that Syrian cat, his show is sharp. He's sharp. And to his credit, he's the only one. He read the super chat. I paid $5 and he read the super chat, and where I said, man, because he was doing a whole thing about Julian Assange. And I've said, all respect to Julian Assange. And I think Assange should be supported. He should be freed. What they're doing to him is horrible. But for all this attention to him, I said, Mumia has been exposing I forgot exactly what I said, but he's been exposing the nature of the state and the crimes of the state longer than Julian Assange, and punished more severely and longer than Julian Assange. And yet not one word has been said about Mumia on so many of the outlets. Richard Medhurst read the comment and said he took the criticism to heart and said he was going to look into that and do better. So I appreciate that. Ben Norton responded and said that his crew at the Gray Zone was going to look into that. Because I said to all, I was like, man, look, man, it's like all hands on deck. Mumia is, whatever the political differences are, whatever the personal differences are, people got to, he shouldn't just be allowed to die in jail. So I was saying your audiences would be able to help. But I'm not seeing it yet on any of their outlets. And I find that to be really disappointing. Jimmy Dore, the same thing. I watch his show. I think his show is great. But I don't hear him talking about Mumia, and I don't hear him talking to, he's found his one or two, they find their favorite people to talk to, but they'll talk about Assange and they'll talk about, this and that, but these connections are never made. How can you not see the connection between Julian Assange and Mumia Abu-Jamal? It feels willful. So yeah, I'm with you on that. But again, to try to stay consistent, my criticism of Jimmy Dore or the Gray Zone or certainly Democracy Now! At this point, who used to be, I don't watch anymore. So they used to be the champions of Mumia. I hope they're doing something. But that I want to be consistent in saying that my criticism of them is not personal. It is of the structural influences that would discourage them from talking about it and really covering it. I mean, I don't understand why there aren't the same levels of investigative, coverage of Mumia as there are of the OPCW scandal. Why isn't there the same kind of investigative coverage that I see the white left doing of even Flint on Status Quo? I watched that show too. They do a lot of great work, but they don't talk about Mumia. They talk about Julian. Same thing. I was, So Katie Halper, I watch her show too. No Mumia. But my point is, it again, to stay consistent, is not to be personally disparaging of people individually or even of media outlets that I watch. It is to understand structurally what is encouraging that, and I think that's where we need to come in with a better level of organization. So I really appreciate that so many in our circles work with Black Alliance for Peace or the All African People's Revolutionary Party or Malcolm X grassroots movement, even, or whoever, even Black Lives Matter. I really don't care. But we need to be increasing, that level of organization so that these individual shortcomings have less impact and or can be maybe mediated and mitigated in advance. So anyway, that was it. That was it. I do have a class in 10 minutes, so I appreciate all of you for coming through and checking this out. Those who will see this later, please, speaking of things that I like to watch, I've straight up jacked something here because one of the sort of breaks from the news that I watch is Comedy Hype, the Comedy Hype channel on YouTube, where I've in my own mind I've come to call myself the Pierre of Black radical politics. So I am to Black radical politics what Pierre is to comedy. And that may be more appropriate a comparison that I actually want. But just like him on their show, whether you're watching this live now or you catch us later, I want you to
put it in the comments.
But whatever you got to say,
put it in the comments.
Oh, because they get it Pierre bad. He takes some bad political arguments too, by the way. So when I say I'm the Pierre Black radical politics, this is obviously not meant to talk about the positions that he takes, but that idea I want to encourage and support. Put it in the comments. If you got something to say, put it in the comments, and we'll check it out. So anyway, there's more time. You got something?
Put it in the comments.
Anyway, seriously, all respect to Miss Rice and all the people who are out here suffering all this ridiculous and colonial police state violence. And I just want to encourage myself and all of us to find better ways to become more radically organized and in lockstep, so that we can again mediate or mitigate some of these whacknesses that keep popping up. As we try to respond to this media environment that is weaponized and from the jump. And we are going to talk about that soon come. Yasha Levine's Surveillance Valley. I'm working on, I want to put together, if I can't get him to come on, which I haven't been able to reach him yet, I'm going to put together an entire in-depth presentation on that book for us to discuss, because what he is saying and the gaps he's filling in for me in terms of the creation of our media environment and the military origins of it is indispensable work. And we need to more, I need to, and I think we need to more and more involve that in our analyses, so that, because really frankly, and this is not meant as, I'll just end here, but frankly, I think it's even better. I should have started with this. I think it's better that we understand that the Grammys and pop cultural commercial media, they are indeed psychological warfare materials. They are psychological warfare tools and weapons. And this isn't even my opinion. This is from the perspective of those who created this entire apparatus and who have been talking about it in detail, as Levine points out, for 50, 60 and more years. That specifically to blunt the potential for counterinsurgency movements to occur, to limit counterinsurgents internal to the United States. A media apparatus must be created, allowing networked computers to concoct a weaponized psychological warfare environment. So I think this is a better way to look at, again, Mallory herself is not the point. I myself, when I fail, is not the point. The white left, when they fail, are not the point. The point is that much of this has been created, the situation has been created as a psychological warfare environment, all in which all of us are working. So the better organized we are, the better we can respond to that. So anyway, much more coming up on Black Power Media today with Luke Mon Nation. So much has already been posted, so there's plenty for you to catch up on the channel. And I Mix What I Like Live will be back later this week with Nora Erakat, talking about Black and Palestinian solidarity and so much more. So as Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. As Pierre says,
put it in the comments.
We'll catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like Live and Black Power Media. Peace, everybody. Have a good day.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Put it in the comments.